It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of July 31st, 1998. We have 6 movies to look at because originally we had 7, but I couldn't find anything for out of the past, so 6 movies to look at. We still got a packed show, so let's just go ahead and dive on into it. And we'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is Disney's remake of The Parent Trap.
Why the sudden curiosity about your dad, huh?
Mother, you can't avoid the subject forever. At least tell me what he was like. I want to talk to you about my mother.
Well, what about your mother?
Dad, I'm almost 12. How long do you expect me to buy that story that the stork dropped me on your doorstep?
Everyone in the world believes they're unique in their own way. Annie James and Hallie Parker are about to discover.
This is so freaky.
They're both unique in the same way.
That's my mom. That's my dad. And you and I are like sisters. Hallie, we're like twins. I have a brilliant idea. I think we should switch places. I'll go back to London as you, and you go back to California as me. If we switch, they'll have to unswitch us. And when they do, they'll have to meet again, face to face. Honey, you never looked better.
Welcome home, kiddo.
Dad. Finally.
Now, 2 sisters
You're back. Mother.
are setting the perfect trap
It seems like it's been forever. You have no idea.
to bring their parents back together.
This is an emergency. Dad's in love. What?
Wear your shirt like this. I like it when I can see a little chest hair.
It's disgusting. If there's any hope of getting Mom and Dad back together, we've got to do it fast.
I am marrying your father in 2 weeks, and nothing you do is going to come between us.
Hi, Mary.
Hello.
How you doing?
Both of them? From the makers of Father of the Bride,
Does everyone here know something I don't know?
Yes.
Dennis Quaid, Natasha Richardson, and introducing Lindsay Lohan.
Starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. Mom's amazing. Don't know how you ever let her go. I wish I may. I wish I might. Have my wish come true tonight.
Disney's The Parent Trap.
So this is, of course, a remake of the 1961 classic starring Haley Mills, and this is written by and directed by the same team that gave us the Father of the Bride remake and its sequel, Nancy Meyers and Charles Shire. And basically, we have the same kind of story here. Dennis Quaid and Natasha Richardson star as a divorced couple who separate shortly after their identical twin daughter's birth. Lindsay Lohan in her feature film debut plays the twins, and they reunite at summer camp after being separated at birth, and they decide to switch around so that one can live with the father and the other can live with the mother until they realize that that it's not the same kid and they have to come back together. It's basically the same premise as the original film from the 1960s. But we've talked about how Disney's live-action films around this point were not very good, and very rarely were there some good ones. George of the Jungle was one of the few examples. This is probably one of the best examples of one of the best Disney live-action movies from the late 90s, when they were... This was back during a time when the live-action movie department was really struggling, but this film is definitely one of the strongest highlights. It's a movie that has grown on me over time. My sister used to love it, and not too long ago I did come around to actually liking it again. It's just a great movie. Lindsay Lohan is great in the film, playing the twins, handling both an American and a British accent pretty well, all things considered. You have Dennis Quaid and Natasha Richardson. Their chemistry and their charm together is just so good. It also helps that you have the work of Nancy Meyers and Charles Shire. I mean, they seem like the perfect duo to tackle this project after what they did with Father of the Bride. And they do a good job of keeping the main crux of the story in check while also modernizing the entire concept to where it actually benefits and honestly, the more I think about it, honestly, I think it does a better job of modernizing the story than most remakes do. It modernizes it a little bit, but it definitely works to the film's advantage that they are able to modernize this concept by not going completely overboard. They know when to play it at the right level, and the film works because of that. I think it works really well. Like I said, it's one of the best Disney live-action movies from the late 90s. Definitely one of the stronger films to come out in that era. And it's a film that definitely has grown over time. And it shows that Lindsay Lohan could be a great actress when she was little. And she actually did grow to become a good actress. later on down the road. But I digress. That's The Parent Trap. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here: Kevin Spacey and Samuel L. Jackson in The Negotiator.
Lieutenant Danny Roman is the best hostage negotiator in Chicago.
Is that? After 6 hours, hostage negotiator Danny Roman risked his own life, disarming the hostage taker.
In a perfect world, that would be enough.
No search warrant is home.
But in this department,
You know me. I'm being set up.
an honest cop is an easy target. Now, to clear his name, he's taking the police hostage
I'm not going to jail today.
and demanding his own negotiator.
I don't want to talk to anyone else but Chris St. Now, we consider it.
No.
Never say no to a hostage taker. It's in the manual. Go ahead, Danny.
Academy Award nominee Samuel L. Jackson.
I know the rules of engagement, so don't.
Academy Award winner Kevin Spacey.
Relax. I'll call back. I'm on my way up. I know you don't think I'm innocent, so don't tell me I want to do everything I can to get out of here. You want something from me. I still have hostages. What was that, a threat? Did you just threaten me? Chief, they have a shot. We can end it right here. You want my blood? Why should I get in their way, huh? Take my blood! Make me believe why I should deal with you ever again. They want me dead. We're going in. Full breach. Sending you to one. This is in full breach. Shut on sight.
Now, if they can trust each other, you were wrong about me. Two men trained in the art of negotiation.
I'm surrounded by a room of people who want to go in there and kill him. I wonder why that is. You know this man, Lieutenant.
Are about to make
Take the sergeant down. Do not take that shot.
a very
Terminate this breach. Come on. Pull the trigger.
unusual offer.
You are not in control. Now you're going to have to deal with both of us.
God, I wish this movie was a lot better than it actually was. I mean, come on, you got Samuel L. Jackson and Kevin Spacey as two expert hostage negotiators and Chicago police lieutenants. Samuel L. Jackson's character is accused of a crime he didn't commit, and he's a hostage negotiator, and they bring in this other hostage negotiator played by Spacey to kind of to be the one guy to try to calm him down and bring him into justice. And you find out that there's this whole conspiracy going on here, and when you figure out what it is, that's where the film really, really starts to lose me. It's a shame because there's definitely a lot of potential with what they have here. The director of this is F. Gary Gray, who you know from Friday, and he also did another movie before this, Set It Off, which is a really good film. And this is the first film that I think that he really shows his range as a director. It proves that he can direct more than just a comedy or a drama with more a dramedy in general with Set It Off. But this is also co-written by James DeMonico, who's a name they may not be familiar with, but you have definitely seen his work before if you've seen the Purge franchise, because he's the main guy that created that series. And of course, the Purge franchise, for the most part, has been pretty good after getting off to a slow start. But this movie, I don't know. Like when they get to the big twist at the end of the movie, that's where it really does start to lose me. Kevin Spacey and Samuel L. Jackson both work fine for the movie overall, but the story needed a lot more work. And like I said, once you get to the twist at the end, it just really kind of ruins the mood of the film. It's a shame because there's a lot of good things about the movie that I want to recommend about it, but other than that, though, it really does not have a whole lot there to really say you need to go see this movie. Not a bad movie per se, but just a very disappointing film, all things considered. I feel like it could have been a whole lot better with the talent they had on here. If the script had been a little bit more cleared up and written a lot better, I think we would have had something really special here. But not so much with The Negotiator. So with that said, on to the next movie, and that is Ever After, A Cinderella Story.
Just breathe.
So this is a very different take on Cinderella. This is a version where you have the brothers Grimm arriving at the home of a wealthy grande dame, played by Jean Moreau, who speaks of many legends surrounding the fable of the Cinder Girl before telling the true story of her ancestor. And in flashback, the story then focuses on 18-year-old Danielle, daughter of a wealthy widower, 16th century landowner, and after returning to France with his new wife, Amelia, played by Angelica Houston, and her 2 daughters, she dies of a heart attack. And 10 years later, Danielle, now played by Drew Barrymore, is now treated as a servant by the trio, and she encounters a prince, played by Dougray Scott, who is fleeing an arranged marriage. And when Danielle poses a lady, the prince takes interest in her, and Leonardo da Vinci, played by Patrick Godfrey, accepts the French's court patrons and offers advice to Prince Henry on matters of the heart. So it's a very different take on Cinderella that you would have considered when you got the idea of it. I mean, it isn't very much inspired by the story of Cinderella. It takes place in the period times, and it removes the pantomime and supernatural elements that are commonly associated with the tale, and instead treats it as historical fiction set in the Renaissance era, which really could have ruined the film overall, but surprisingly, this film works very well. You would not believe that this is the same director that gave us It Takes Two, which was the Parent Trap knockoff of 1995, and tying it back to the original film. But, no, this is the same director, and he did a pretty good job with it. I mean, the cast overall is great. Drew Barrymore, Angelica Houston, Dougray Scott, Melanie Linsky is also in here. Just a phenomenal cast overall here. It's a really good idea. It would have been so easy to just do what they did with Romeo and Juliet a couple years prior to this, but no, they took it and did something completely new and different with it. And in a way, it actually works very well. It's stylishly beautiful to look at, visually pleasing, a story that really works very well. It's definitely a very different Cinderella story than you used to be seeing, but it works very well. It's one that I don't think a lot of people really talk about nowadays, but it's definitely worth a lot more attention nowadays, since we've gotten more Cinderella adaptations than the one that we just had recently with Camila Cabella is downright terrible, that one. But we did get a good one with Disney, with the Kenneth Branagh one that came out about almost 10 years ago. God, that was almost 10 years ago. I mean, times have changed, man. But yeah, this is a film that deserves a lot more attention. I think it's a very well-made film. Great performances by Drew Barrymore, Angelica Houston, Dougray Scott. Just a good cast overall, a good idea overall. It's a well-done film. I highly recommend it, Ever After. So with that said, let's get to probably my favorite movie of the entire week, and that is, of course, BASEketball.
It's free-range chicken night.
Did you find my chicken?
Yeah! I finally got all the chrome off this video.
From the director of The Naked Gun and starring the creators of South Park, BASEketball, rated R.
Yet another great comedy from 1998 that got thrashed when it came out, but has since gone on to have a cult following to it, and God bless it, man, because this movie is friggin' amazing. I mean, from the director of The Naked Gun, with the creators of South Park, how can you go wrong on that front? Basically, you have the story of the sport of BASEketball, a hybrid sport combining baseball and basketball that was invented by Zucker in the 1980s. And Parker and Stone played childhood friends who invent the game as something they could win against more athletic types, and the sport becomes an overnight sensation and a target of corporate sponsorship. And maybe the movie was a little bit too ahead of its time. I think Trey Parker and Matt Stone were still relatively new to the general public, even though they had been working in Hollywood for several years, even before South Park came around. I think they were actually working as interns at Universal because they did videos for them for company reasons when they were owned by Seagrams. And but this is just after a year they made South Park. They started South Park, and slowly but surely their name started to build onto its own. And the film overall was a really good. It's a really, really good movie. I think it's a film that definitely deserves a lot more attention than it deserves. There's interesting stories behind this film. This was something that was originally pitched as a TV series at first, which had a pilot episode which had Chris Rock in it. It was filmed but never made it to series. When they greenlit this at Universal, Chris Farley was supposed to be attached to star in it, which probably would have made this a lot more interesting to see how that would have panned out. But David Zucker essentially decided to cast Parker and Stone because South Park had gone on to become a huge hit. And they only did the movie under the assumption that the show would have been canceled by the time filming began. And as you can tell, that was not the case, as South Park is still on the air as of today. It just completed its 26th season on the air. So, yeah, it just goes to show you how the lasting longevity of South Park is. But the movie is just a ton of fun, man. The cameos are all this movie. They get everybody. Like, they get people from ABC and ESPN. You see Bob Costas from NBC, Al Michaels. They have a lot of people from ESPN, Kenny Mayne, Dan Patrick, a lot of people from CBS as well. Like, they grab a lot of these sports voiceover people, sports announcers, I guess. But not only that, you have sports athletes like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Dale Earnhardt, Reggie Jackson, Kevin Michael Richardson, Greg Gunberg, Victoria Silvstedt, Robert Stack, Real Big Fish. That's just the cameos alone. You have, in addition to Trey Parker, Matt Stone, Ernest Borgnine, Robert Vaughn, Jenny McCarthy, Yasmin Bleeth, Dion Bakar, who's worked with Trey Parker and Matt Stone over the years. The movie is just a ton of fun, and it just definitely feels like the Zucker vibe is in this movie. And you know me, I love David Zucker movies. I love his style of spoof comedy. I will always go see those movies, even if they don't end up being as great as they should be. This movie definitely deserves a lot of attention. There are so many great laugh-out-loud moments in this movie, especially the part where they go to the hospital where Trey Parker's character basically promises a kid that he'd win the game for them, a dying sick kid, and they go into the hospital and he's trying to save the kid's life, and he just keeps doing all these crazy things throughout the entire scene, and just so much happens in that scene. It's really hard for me to describe it in this one little segment here, but if you see the movie, you definitely know what I'm talking about. This is a film that definitely deserves a lot more attention than it has gotten over the years. It slowly but surely is developing that cult following, but it's really not there yet, but it definitely deserves it. This is a funny movie that deserves a lot more attention than I think it deserves. It's a great movie. If you have not seen BASEketball, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. Go check it out. You will not be disappointed by it at all. So that's BASEketball. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is The Governess.
How can you love me?
And you say she returns your affections?
There is no doubt.
Charles, what have I done? Please.
Minnie Driver, Tom Wilkinson, Harriet Walter, Jonathan Rhys Meyers, in a film by Sandra Goldbach, The Governess.
So The Governess is basically a story focusing on a young Jewish woman of Sephardic background. She reinvents herself as a Gentile governess when she is forced to find work to support her family, and she's played by Minnie Driver. You also see Tom Wilkinson, Jonathan Rhys Meyers among the cast there. Other than that, I don't know too much about the movie. I've never seen it before. I know this director has done a lot of BBC stuff, Sandra Goldbacher, and not much more I can say about it because I haven't seen it. Reviews for it are about what you'd expect for a film like this. I mean, it definitely could go either way, but I really don't know anything about this movie, honestly. So, yeah, not much more I can say about The Governess. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is, or last movie, I should say, the last movie, which is the documentary Full Tilt Boogie.
Ready? Where'd you get that? Hey, what's ready to say?
Down the hall. Next to the hot desk, please.
There you go.
Thank you.
You don't need mine? Okay, fine. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Right this way, Mr. Kennedy.
What a strange documentary to make a movie about. I mean, I know Hearts of Darkness was a great movie about the making of Apocalypse Now, but there was so much going on behind the scenes of that movie. But this film, I didn't really expect a whole lot to go behind the scenes of. You basically have a docudrama about filming the movie From Dusk Till Dawn, a great film from a couple years ago, and you have Stella Carey, the director of this, taking a non-union film crew onto the set and on location near Barstow of this independent non-union production, and camaraderie and a constant eye of the shooting schedule dominates interactions. You have Quentin Tarantino and George Clooney mugging for the camera, Robert Rodriguez, Juliette Lewis, and Fred Williamson talk about craft. We watch scenes being shot. Kelly asks crew members what they do, why they do what they do, and also the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees protests the non-union status of From Dusk Till Dawn. Executive producer Lawrence Bender tells his side of the story, and Kelly talks to a variety reporter of others. What's the nature of an indie film? And These are very good questions, and I gotta say, for a film that I was not expecting a whole lot from, I was actually pretty surprised at how much I enjoyed this film. This is basically a documentary, basically showing you what it's like to work behind the camera and not necessarily, you know, dealing with the union aspect of the movie, because this is a non-union film, and in a way, it kind of represents what's going on right now, where you have these non-union these movies that are under the SAG-AFTRA union thing, but they're under this interim agreement where they can still shoot despite the fact there's a strike going on, because they're not released by a major studio. But you could definitely tell there's a lot of similarities to that in this film. Maybe not to the extreme that we have today, but for a movie like this, I gotta say, they did a pretty good job of making this kind of more interesting than I think it had any right to be. I didn't think there was anything that too surprising going on behind the scenes of the movie, but this film surprisingly did have a lot of stuff there that made it kind of interesting, and I was actually kind of amazed at how much they were able to get out of there for over a 90-minute movie. I think it's a film that definitely deserves a lot of attention. Even if you didn't like From Dusk Till Dawn, you should watch this to see what the process of filmmaking is like. And it's a very interesting film to watch. I'd say definitely check it out. You can go find it somewhere. I think it's on most copies of From Dusk Till Dawn as a bonus feature, but it's definitely worth a watch. Full Tilt Boogie. So with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. When we meet next time, we'll talk about Nicolas Cage's newest film with Brian De Palma directing it, Snake Eyes. Michael Myers is back in Halloween H2O 20 years later. John Hamburg, the director of I Love You Man and the writer of the Meet the Parents series, directs the film Safe Men, and also First Love, Last Rites. So 4 films to look at next time around, and we will delve into those on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So with that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.